Getting rid of Jules wasn't easy, but it had to be done. I vividly remember meeting my best friend. It's one of the few memories I have that appear somewhat clear in my mind. A happy moment without alteration. Of course, it was easier then because I was younger. Although I can't say how old for sure, I'd been trying to remember whether Benny was already born. I'd been trying that for different memories, but he only appeared in more recent ones. But the image of Jules is clear as day. She was like a ray of sunshine, dressed in a white skirt with lots of bright lemons, almost the color of her hair. Her mom had the same lemons on her apron. We went over to their house after they'd invited us to a barbecue. The parents were chatting loudly. Our mums connected right away, and so did Jules and I. After we ate, we went inside and played games. Thinking about it now, it was a lot like the day Alex's family came over. We like to repeat stuff. After that day, we were inseparable. She introduced me to everything I know and love. I used to look at her and feel like I belonged. The last time I looked at her, I wished that she would drop dead. Mum and Dad were both gone. Mum had work to do, which was odd for a Sunday, but sometimes that's what it was like. We never questioned her work. Dad had gone to some kind of play date with Benny. None of us mentioned last night during breakfast. Jules and I were in my room getting ready for the cinema. I knew right away there was a reason why she came to my place before. She wanted to talk about Alex. I meant to keep things to myself, at least for now, but after the night I was feeling awfully nervous. Instead of drinking the milk last night, I poured it away because I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to think. Now, with only 2 hours of sleep and a mind going in all directions, I started regretting my decision. It made me more emotional and less careful. When she asked about Alex, Jules probably wanted to know if I had a crush on him or something. You can imagine the look she gave me when I told her about everything else. The words came out of my mouth like vomit. The engraved name, the view from my window on his first night, the things the father said. I was pushing my fingernails into the palm of my hand to keep myself from starting to cry. He looked so scary, nothing like my dad, I whispered after I'd poured out everything that had happened without pause. Jules had been watching me carefully and quietly the entire time. But Jules, I don't think he's going crazy. I think he tried to warn me. I whispered the last part, even though we were all alone in the house. My friend got up and sat down right next to me on the bed, with no distance to move. She put her hands on top of mine, which were still formed into fists, and gently lifted up my fingers. Then she moved her hands to my wrists and grabbed them tightly. God, you are so stupid. Her tone was mellow, cold. What? She sighed. Insufferable, really. If it weren't for your mother, you'd probably be long dead. I don't even want to know how often your parents drug you, although I can assume. I stared at her face that showed not a single sign of emotion. Her grip became even tighter. I am sorry, Charlie. I hoped we could earn our place in Agsbury alongside each other. Of course, I would have gotten married first and worked to be accepted as a member with my own house, and then you could have tried the same. We would have been like our moms. With our upbringing, we would have had so many years to live. Now, only one of us does. I tried to pull away, but her nails were digging into my flesh. What on earth are you talking about, Jules? Only worthy ones are chosen to live in heaven, Charlie. Our families worked so hard to come to Agsbury. They spend all their time becoming important members of the community. One day they will be chosen to become the soil that nourishes our earth, the earth that gives up happiness, fortune, and health in return. Finally, she was showing emotion, but in a way that made my blood freeze. Her eyes were opened wide the entire time as if she'd forgotten how to blink, and her teeth were grinding loudly against each other as she tried to force the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Where did you learn all this? What soil? You mean when we die we are buried? When we are offered and buried, silly. But only when it is our time to leave Agsbury. And I have no intention of leaving the community anytime soon. But you, she signed, you don't understand it, Charlie. Even with all the years your parents have tried to prepare you, you've stayed clueless. Do you know how hard it is to be friends with someone so dumb? If it weren't for your lovely mom, I would have abandoned you much sooner. She loosened her grip slightly and tilted her head. "Oh, poor Charlie. You look so scared. Don't worry. It will all be fine. You won't be turned into soil before you turn 18. I will talk to your mother and she will wipe your little memory as gently as she can, and then we can have a bit more time together." While all her words were like daggers in my brain, I had to focus. It was possible that my friend had lost her mind, but after everything I'd witnessed these past days, I think the truth was much more complicated. And whatever happened, I couldn't let her talk to my parents. I had to keep my memory clear. So as Jules kept blabbering about her fruitful future, I slammed my head against hers in a moment of surprise. I didn't even think about it. My body simply started to act and my brain tried hard with no time to keep up. She instinctively let my arms go and I got up as quickly as I could, ignoring the pain in my face. She followed fast and grabbed my shirt to pull me down to my knees. "Help!" she shouted, but I shut her up by pushing my elbow into her stomach. She dropped to the ground and I quickly jumped on top of her, pushing my knee into her chest. As the adrenaline rushed through my body, I tried to think of my next step. I wasn't used to fighting anyone, and then we were interrupted. "What the hell?" a new voice spoke. It was Alex who had come inside without our knowledge. Nobody in bloody Agsbury ever locks their door. "Get her off me!" Jules started crying. Alex didn't move. He looked at our bloody faces. When Jules said, "Charlie has gone mad," it looked as if something inside of him clicked. "Do you have a tape? A rope maybe?" Jules and I both stared at him. I took a deep breath. "Jules said my mother drugs me. Can you hold her down while I look for something?" It was in the honey. There was no scent to it, but it made the most sense. She kept it hidden at the back of the highest cupboard, and we never had honey with breakfast or any other meal, but it was always in my milk. Getting Jules to swallow the honey mixture I made wasn't easy, but we managed. My heart was racing the entire time. My mind was so focused on hoping that nobody would come home that I didn't even have time to process what had just happened. Together with Alex, I had drugged my best friend, tied her up, and hid the sleeping girl in my closet. The pain only got to me as Alex and I cycled all the way to Agsbury Lake and I told him everything I'd learned from my father and Jules. Agsbury Lake was my favorite place because I could always go there to be alone. Of course, back then I didn't know that the people of Agsbury regularly fed it with corpses because they believed that it nourished our water. Alex looked surprised after everything I told him, though not as much as me. Maybe because his old life was more recent than mine. I don't know why I never questioned anything before. Agsbury really does feel like heaven, but lately everyone seems to be breaking a little. Jules said something about them turning people into soil. When they find me, I stopped talking. "We need to get away," Alex said firmly. "There's no place in Agsbury where we can hide and we can never get far enough on our bikes. And what about our families?" I wrapped my arms around my legs. "So what now?" he asked. I shrugged. "I'm sorry I pulled you into this." I took a deep breath. "Why did you even help me and not Jules?" Alex started tapping his fingers on the ground nervously. "When I saw you there, something in my mind shattered. For a moment, I remembered the night we came here. Your dad was there, and other adults. He paused for a moment. "They hurt me. Tried to make me comply or whatever. Jules was there as well, with all the adults. I think it was some kind of initiation, and she seemed weirdly into it. She had that look your mom always has, the one my parents now have as well." I swallowed. "Was it the night you carved my name into you?" "Yes. I don't remember everything, but I know it was bad. And it's our families that did this to us. We need to get help or—" "Charlie!" Both of us turned around in the same second to see where the voice was coming from. It was my dad walking down the path that leads from the street to the lake. I jumped up. Shit, what now?" Alex looked just as clueless as me, and even more afraid when his eyes met the ones of my dad. At the top of the path, I saw a car. We didn't have a car. Nobody in Agsbury did. There was no need for the residents of Agsbury to have cars. We had bikes for short trips inside the town, and if we wanted to, we could buy skateboards or roller skates, but nothing with a motor. If you are someone with important privileges, you do drive a car at times. For example, if you pick up a new family, and Dad was a trusted resident, but I had no idea why he had it now. Was he trying to get rid of us? "Get in the car, now!" Alex and I both turned to the water for a split second. Should we try to swim? I didn't even know where the lake ended. We don't have much time. Get in the car now. Benny's already inside. Hurry. How did you know that we were at the lake? After I found jewels in your closet and saw that your bike was gone, I just assumed. You used to run away to the lake often after we moved to Agsbury. I think you were too young to understand the full extent, but your gut already knew this place was wrong. I wish mine had as well. Only as we reached roads that I'd never seen before, my heartbeat started slowing down. Lately, I've been too afraid of my own family. If my dad hadn't mentioned Benny, I probably would have jumped in the water. Now I was glad that I hadn't, after my father finally, for the first time in my life, really spoke the truth. Agsbury was a paradise, a place that you didn't choose but had to be chosen for, if you showed enough determination and love to grow this community. We met one of their spokesmen on a holiday once. He told us about this wonderful place where families live together in happiness, where there is no crime, no hate. Of course, we didn't believe much of what he was saying at first, but then they get to you eventually. You were only 10 back then, and we didn't have much money and little support from our respective families. Agsbury was going to fill all those voids for us, so we wrote our application and had many interviews and trials. It took almost a year until we finally received the acceptance letter. Your mother couldn't believe her eyes. I'd never seen her happier than that day. Alex and I stayed silent, sucking in all the words as my dad was speaking. I was sitting at the front next to my dad while Alex was in the back with the fast asleep Benny. There were so many rules. We weren't allowed to leave, even for vacation. We weren't allowed to own a car. When I think about it now, I believe we were insane for wanting it, but they had a way to be persuasive. I didn't like where things were going. And we were happy. We convinced ourselves to be. Your mother especially, even when she learned about the ritual. Once a year, a family is chosen. Often it happens when their youngest child turns 18. I want to spare you the horrifying details, but these families never truly leave Agsbury. They believe, and I used to as well, that dying and becoming a part of Agsbury's grounds was the greatest honor. The town feeds on the dead and pays its residents with good fortune. My stomach started turning. But wait, we moved here when Benny was born. This isn't adding up, I said. My dad nervously looked through the mirror at Benny. They don't always wait until the child turns 18. He needed a new family. I looked at the sweet face of the boy I only knew as my brother and couldn't help but imagine what they'd done to his parents. This couldn't be real. Dad, where are we going? He took a deep breath. We are getting away before they notice that the car is gone. Where to, I'm not sure yet. He looked at Alex. I know this is a lot for you too. I'm sure you don't want to leave your parents, but... He stopped talking. Why now? Alex suddenly asked. Why should we even believe you? I know you were there on my first night. Why didn't you help us? He was almost shouting now. Because I needed time to become myself again. Normally when a new family comes, their children are still pretty young. They can be persuaded easily. For you, it was hard. Your parents tried to talk you into it, but you couldn't be convinced. But they wanted this so much and showed all this determination. They'd have done anything, and I saw it on the night you moved in. We were going paths I'd never seen before, luckily with no people in sight. I can't believe other residents hadn't tried to flee. I wondered how people could be persuaded so easily, but remembered that I'd been the same until now. But the moment something in my mind really shattered was when I heard them call you by your real name, Charlie, my dad continued. Alex and I exchanged a confused look. It reminded me how they wipe everything from our old lives. You having the current name of my daughter. He looked at Alex through the mirror. It reminded me of her real one. Lucia, I whispered. A tear was forming in the corner of my dad's eye. I am so sorry for everything we've done to you children. I pulled you aside that night. He was talking to Alex again. Pressured you not to forget your name. I thought I could do something at least, but it took me some time to collect the courage and formulate my plan. I wanted to get more children out of there, but they have very smart ways to trick the outside world as well. If I went to the authorities, they'd only put me in jail for kidnapping. I felt like I would throw up any second. Dad, what about Mum? Your mother would happily die to become soil for the grounds of Agsbury, and she'd take us with her. For now, we need to save ourselves.